It was nearly midnight in the city of Nivora. The streets buzzed with late-night traffic, neon lights blinking like restless hearts, and the distant hum of 1,000 dreams refusing to sleep. Inside a small apartment on the 7th floor, Aaron, a 28-year-old office worker, sat in front of his laptop, staring blankly at the glowing screen. His inbox was full. His phone wouldn't stop vibrating. His head wouldn't stop thinking. He leaned back in his chair and whispered, "Why can't my mind just be quiet for once?" Every day felt the same. Wake up, rush to work, smile when he didn't feel like it, return home, scroll endlessly, fall asleep exhausted but unsatisfied. Aaron wasn't unhappy exactly. He had a job, friends, even a family that cared. But he felt something was missing, like his heart was a room filled with noise, but no music. That night, unable to sleep, he opened the window and stared outside. Far away, through the city lights, he noticed something strange. A faint outline of mountains, half hidden behind the mist. He hadn't noticed them before. He didn't even know his city had mountains visible from here. And at that moment, something stirred inside him. A small voice whispered, "Go there." The next morning, without much thought, Aaron packed a small bag, switched off his phone, and boarded a bus heading toward the hills. The bus rattled over uneven roads as it climbed higher and higher. Aaron watched the world change from glass towers to green forests, from traffic horns to bird song. He felt oddly nervous, like someone walking into silence after years of noise. By the time the bus stopped at a small riverside village, the sun was beginning to set. He stepped out and took a deep breath. The air felt alive. A narrow path led from the village into a forest. Aaron walked until he found a small clearing where a calm river flowed, reflecting the evening sky. He sat on a rock beside it, listening to the sound of water touching stone. For the first time in years, he felt no urgency. Just quiet. But his thoughts wouldn't stop. Did I turn off the stove? Should I have left without telling anyone? What am I even doing here? He sighed. Even here I can't escape my own head. That's when he heard a voice behind him. "You came here to escape your mind, didn't you?" Startled, Aaron turned around. An old man stood there, wearing simple white clothes and carrying a walking stick. His eyes were clear and kind, the kind that made you feel seen without being judged. Yes, Aaron admitted. "I just wanted peace. But it's not working." The old man smiled. "Peace does not come when you run from noise. It comes when you understand it." Aaron frowned. "Understand it? How?" The man sat beside him. "Tell me, when you look at this river, do you try to stop its flow?" "Of course not," said Aaron. "It's a river. It's supposed to flow." The man nodded. "And yet, you try to stop your thoughts. You fight the current of your own mind. That is why it becomes restless." Aaron stayed quiet, staring at the river. It made sense, in a way. The old man continued. "If you wish to find calm, you must first learn to flow with your thoughts, not against them." He stood up and said, "Come to the temple on the hill tomorrow at sunrise. If you wish to learn, the first lesson will begin." "Wait," Aaron said. "Who are you?" The man smiled softly. "Just another traveler who learned to listen to the river." And with that, he walked away, leaving Aaron alone with the sound of the water and his own heartbeat, both steady, both alive. That night, Aaron slept by the river. For the first time in a long time, his dreams were quiet. The first light of dawn crept slowly over the valley. Mist floated above the quiet river, and birds called from the trees like they were greeting the day itself. Aaron woke to the smell of wet grass and sunlight. He stretched, rubbed his eyes, and remembered the old man's words. "Come to the temple on the hill at sunrise." He hesitated for a moment. Maybe it was just a strange dream, but something inside him, a feeling he hadn't felt in years, told him to go. The path to the hill temple wound through tall trees and fields covered in dew. By the time he reached the stone steps that led upward, the sun had begun to rise. At the top stood a small ancient temple, built of rough stone and covered in moss. Sitting near the entrance was the same old man from the river, eyes closed, breathing slowly, almost as if time itself moved around him. Aaron approached quietly. The man spoke without opening his eyes. "You came. That means your heart still listens, even when your mind does not." Aaron smiled nervously. "I guess I'm just tired of the noise." The man opened his eyes and said gently, "Then let us begin with silence." He gestured for Aaron to sit beside him. The two of them sat facing the sunrise, the world glowing gold before them. "Close your eyes," the man said. "Listen. Don't control, don't think, just listen." Aaron tried. At first he only heard his own thoughts. "I can't sit still. What's the point of this? What if someone calls me?" But the man's calm presence beside him made it easier to breathe. Then, slowly, Aaron began to notice things beyond his mind. The sound of the river in the distance, the wind brushing against the leaves, a bird calling, his heartbeat. It was like a hidden orchestra that had always been there, waiting for him to finally listen. After what felt like minutes, or maybe hours, the old man spoke. "Do you see, Aaron? The world was never noisy. Only your mind was." Aaron opened his eyes, and the world looked different, brighter, quieter, more alive. He asked softly, "Is this what peace feels like?" The man chuckled. "This is only the beginning. Peace is not a place you reach, it's a way you walk." He handed Aaron a small wooden bowl of water. "Look into it," he said. "What do you see?" "My reflection," Aaron replied. The man stirred the water gently with a stick. The reflection broke into ripples. "Now, what do you see?" "Nothing clearly," said Aaron. "It's all shaking." "Exactly," said the man. "This bowl is your mind. When you are restless, your thoughts ripple, and you cannot see truth clearly. But when you are still—" He stopped stirring. The water settled. Aaron's face reappeared. "Everything becomes clear." Aaron looked at the still water again. He whispered, "So I need to keep my mind still?" The man shook his head. "Not still. Steady. Stillness is death. Steadiness is life. The river moves but remains calm because it flows with purpose." He stood and looked toward the mountains. "There are many ways to keep the mind calm, Aaron. Today you learned the first, to listen. When you truly listen, your mind stops fighting and begins to understand." The monk smiled. "Tomorrow we will learn the second way, to breathe. For now, return to the river and practice listening until the sun sleeps." Aaron bowed slightly. "Thank you, but I never asked. What's your name?" The man paused for a long time before answering. "People once called me Saren. But names are like waves. They rise and fade. What matters is the river underneath." Then he walked slowly into the temple, leaving Aaron standing in the sunlight, holding the bowl of water that reflected both his face, and something deeper, something quieter. The wind spoke without words. The river whispered without sound, and his heart finally replied softly, "I am still here." The next morning began with the cry of distant eagles and the soft glow of dawn spilling across the hills. Aaron awoke by the riverside, feeling lighter than the day before. The air tasted pure, almost sweet. He remembered Saren's words, "Tomorrow we will learn to breathe." Aaron made his way back up the stony path to the temple. The morning mist hung low, and the world seemed half awake, the kind of stillness that feels sacred. Saren was already there, sitting cross-legged beside the temple steps. He looked as if he had been waiting for centuries. Without a word, he motioned for Aaron to sit. They sat facing the mountains, their peaks glowing golden in the sunrise. Saren finally spoke. "Tell me, Aaron, what keeps a man alive?" Aaron thought. "Food, water, air?" "Air," Saren repeated softly. "The most vital thing, yet the one we ignore the most." He closed his eyes. "Your breath is the bridge between your body and your mind. If your breathing is fast, your mind races. If your breathing slows, your thoughts follow. You cannot calm your mind without first calming your breath." Aaron nodded. "So how do I do that?" Saren smiled faintly. "By remembering you already know how." Saren led him to a small clearing behind the temple, where the mountain opened up into a wide sunlit valley. The air felt crisp and cool, and a small waterfall trickled nearby, singing its quiet song. "Sit," Saren said. "Close your eyes." "Now breathe as the mountain breathes." Aaron didn't understand, but he tried. He took a deep breath, feeling the air enter his lungs, expand his chest, then leave gently. "Inhale," Saren whispered. "Not with your chest, but with your belly. Let your breath fall deep, like rain seeping into the earth. And when you exhale, imagine all the dust of your worries leaving with it." At first, Aaron's mind kept wandering. Thoughts kept jumping like restless birds. Am I doing it right? What if it doesn't work? But Saren's calm voice guided him again. Every thought is a cloud, Aaron. Don't chase it. Watch it drift by. The sky never fears clouds, because it knows they always pass. So Aaron breathed, slowly, deeply, in and out. The waterfall murmured, the trees swayed, and something inside him began to loosen. The tightness in his chest, the noise in his head, the endless cycle of what-ifs. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Time lost its sharp edges. Finally, Saren said quietly, "Open your eyes." When Aaron did, the world seemed sharper, colors more vivid. He could see the fine dew on each leaf, the play of light on water, the rhythm of nature breathing with him. He whispered, "Everything feels alive." Saren nodded. "Because you are finally breathing with it." He stood up and placed a hand on Aaron's shoulder. "Remember this, Aaron. A calm mind is not built by force. It's grown through rhythm. Breathe with patience, and peace will return to you like a friend you thought you'd lost." Aaron sat silently, feeling the truth of those words in his heartbeat. He realized how long he had lived half alive, breathing fast, talking fast, thinking fast, always chasing, never arriving. Now, each breath felt like a small miracle. That evening, Aaron stayed by the waterfall as the sun dipped low. He practiced what Saren had taught him, listening, breathing, being. He watched his breath move like the tide, rising, falling, steady, free. The air entered him like light and left him like forgiveness. For the first time, Aaron felt that peace wasn't something he had to find. It was already inside him, waiting for him to stop running. When night came, Saren appeared once more, holding a small lantern. "The second lesson is done," he said. "Tomorrow we learn the hardest one." Aaron looked up. "Hardest?" Saren smiled softly. "Yes, tomorrow you will learn to face your own thoughts, not to run, not to breathe them away, but to see them as they are. We call this the Garden of Thoughts." He placed the lantern beside Aaron and said, "Sleep well. You will need courage tomorrow." The old monk turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving only the sound of the waterfall and the faint flicker of the lantern flame. Aaron stared into the light and thought quietly to himself. Maybe calmness isn't the absence of noise. Maybe it's learning to hear the noise differently. And with that thought, he drifted into the most peaceful sleep he'd ever known. Morning came quietly. The mist over the valley shimmered like silver silk, and the air carried the smell of wet earth and pine. Aron sat up slowly, feeling rested, yet nervous. Saren's last words echoed in his mind. Tomorrow, you will learn to face your thoughts. That morning he climbed the stone steps to the temple again. The sky was pale gold, and the first light of the sun touched the peaks gently. Saren was waiting, seated near a circle of small stone statues that surrounded a patch of wildflowers. The air here felt different, heavy, like it carried invisible memories. Aron bowed slightly. Master Saren, what is this place? The old monk smiled faintly. This, he said, is the Garden of Thoughts. Each statue here represents someone who once sat where you sit now. People who came searching for calm and met their own minds for the first time. Aron looked around. Each statue had a unique expression. Some serene, some sorrowful, some even frightened. Saren said softly, Today you will see your own thoughts as they are. No filters, no distractions. It will not be easy, but it is the only way to truly know peace. He motioned for Aron to sit in the center of the garden. Aron closed his eyes. At first, there was silence, a deep, almost tender silence. But then, slowly, the noise began. Memories, voices, regrets, everything he had buried started to rise, like weeds breaking through the soil. He heard his boss yelling from years ago, "You're not good enough, Aron." He saw his parents' disappointed faces when he'd failed his first job interview. He remembered the friend he'd stopped calling, the mistakes he never forgave himself for, the fears he laughed off but secretly carried. It all came rushing back, loud, sharp, relentless. He clenched his fists. "Make it stop," he whispered. From somewhere beyond the noise, Saren's voice echoed gently. "Why do you fight them? These are your own children, born of your past. They are only asking to be seen." Aron tried to breathe, but his chest felt tight. "Just observe," Saren continued. "Do not run. Do not argue. Watch your thoughts as you would watch clouds drift across the sky." Aron took a trembling breath. He pictured each thought as a cloud. One shaped like anger, another like guilt, another like fear. They floated before him, dark and heavy. And then he stopped fighting. He just watched. One by one, the clouds began to fade. He realized something powerful. His thoughts weren't enemies. They were messages. Each one was trying to tell him something he had ignored for too long. The anger said, "You were hurt, and you never let yourself cry." The fear said, "You've been running from failure, not because you can't face it, but because you never forgave yourself for falling once." The guilt said softly, "You still care about the people you lost touch with." Tears slipped down Aron's face, not of pain, but release. The thoughts didn't vanish. They simply lost their power. They became lighter, like distant echoes in a vast hall. When Aron finally opened his eyes, the sun was high in the sky. The wildflowers around him swayed gently in the wind. The world looked exactly the same, yet completely different. Saren sat nearby, smiling. "You faced them," the old monk said. "How do you feel?" Aron took a deep, steady breath. Free, lighter somehow. The thoughts are still there, but they don't control me anymore. He whispered to himself, "I am not my thoughts. I am the sky that holds them," and for the first time, he truly believed it. That night, under a wide moon, Aron stayed by the temple steps, watching the stars reflect in the river below. He knew the journey wasn't over. Saren had said there was one more lesson, the hardest of all, how to stay calm in the middle of life's storms. But for now, he rested, calm, aware, and finally unafraid of his own mind. Days passed like gentle ripples across the river. Each sunrise brought Aaron a deeper sense of stillness. He no longer woke up with a heavy chest or a storm of thoughts. The world felt slower, softer, somehow kinder. He practiced what Saren had taught him, listening, breathing, watching his thoughts without fear. For the first time in years, his inner world and the outer world seemed to move in rhythm. But calm, Saren once warned, was not meant to be tested in silence. A peaceful sea doesn't prove the sailor, the monk had said. Only the storm does. That afternoon, dark clouds began to gather above the hills. The air grew thick and electric. Villagers hurried to pull their animals indoors, while the wind howled through the valley like a restless spirit. Aaron stood outside the temple, watching the storm approach. For some reason, he felt uneasy, not just because of the thunder, but something deeper. A strange tug in his heart, like something was calling him back. He looked toward the road leading down to the village, and suddenly, through sheets of rain, he saw people running, shouting. The river below was rising, flooding fast. Without thinking, Aaron ran down the slippery path toward the village. The storm raged wildly. Water poured through the streets like veins of lightning. A small boy was trapped near the riverbank, clinging to a broken wooden fence as the current roared around him. "Help! Please!" the boy screamed. Aaron didn't think twice. He rushed forward, feet sinking in mud, water biting his skin. The fear in his chest screamed louder than the thunder. "You'll get swept away. You're not strong enough. You'll die." But somewhere behind those thoughts, another voice whispered softly. Saren's voice. "The mind is only as wild as you let it be." Breathe. Even in chaos, Aaron took one deep breath, slow, steady, controlled. He felt his pulse slow, his eyes focused. Then he stepped into the water. It was freezing, fast, and violent. Each step felt like wrestling with the storm itself. But he kept breathing, deep in, deep out, until he reached the boy. "Grab my hand," he shouted. The boy reached out, trembling. Their hands met. Aaron pulled with all his strength, his heart pounding like a drum. The river tried to steal them both, but Aaron remembered every lesson. Don't fight the current, flow with it. He moved with the water, guiding the boy slowly toward a shallow bank, until finally they stumbled out together, collapsing on the wet ground, gasping and laughing and crying all at once. The storm kept roaring, but inside Aaron there was quiet. He realized something astonishing. Even here, surrounded by chaos, his mind was steady. Not empty, not numb, just calm. When the storm finally passed, the valley glowed with the soft light of dawn. The villagers lit lanterns in their homes again, celebrating safety and survival. Aaron climbed back up to the temple, soaked and exhausted. Saren stood at the entrance, waiting with a small smile. "You saved a life," Saren said softly. "But tell me, what did you feel in the storm?" Aaron thought for a long moment before answering. "I was afraid, but I didn't lose myself in it. I breathed through it. I remembered what you taught me." Saren nodded. "Then you have learned the fourth way to keep the mind calm, to stay present in chaos. Do not run from the storm, light your lantern and walk through it." He lifted a small lantern and handed it to Aaron. Its flame danced gently in the wind, never going out. "This," Saren said, "is what peace truly means. It is not the silence after the storm, it is the light that survives during it." Aaron held the lantern close, watching the flame flicker but never fade. He realized that peace wasn't something fragile. It was strong, alive, resilient. That night, the sky cleared, revealing a river of stars. The rain had washed the valley clean. Aaron sat outside the temple, the lantern beside him, its warm glow painting gold circles on the stones. He thought of his old life, the city, the noise, the endless chase for happiness. He smiled faintly. It all seemed so distant now. He whispered to himself, The storm will come again. But now I will not drown. I will breathe. I will listen. I will stay behind him. Saren's voice came softly from the shadows. Then you are ready for the final lesson. Aren turned. The final one? Yes, Saren said. The calm mind must now return to the world. You will learn the hardest truth, that peace is not meant to be kept. It is meant to be shared. The old monk smiled gently. Tomorrow, Aren, you will go home. The next morning the valley shimmered in golden light. Dew sparkled on every leaf. The river, calm after the storm, flowed like liquid glass through the hills. Aren stood outside the temple, holding the small lantern Saren had given him. The flame still flickered softly inside. He felt torn. The mountain had become his refuge, a place where he had learned to listen, to breathe, to understand, and to face his thoughts. But now Saren had told him it was time to leave.
He found the old monk sitting by the river, the same place where they had first met. Aren bowed respectfully. Master Saren, I don't know if I'm ready to go back. The world down there is so loud, so busy. What if I lose this peace? Saren smiled, his eyes as calm as ever. Aren, the peace you found here was never in the mountain. It was always in you. You just needed silence to see it. He pointed toward the river. Look at the water. It begins here, pure and still, but soon it will meet stones, dirt, even garbage. Yet it keeps flowing, carrying its calm wherever it goes. That is your task now, to carry your stillness into the world. Aren looked down at the lantern. The flame glowed softly, alive but fragile. And if the wind blows it out? He asked. Saren chuckled. Then you relight it from within. Remember, calmness isn't the absence of noise. It's the strength to remain kind, clear, and aware even when surrounded by it. He reached out and placed his hand gently on Aren's heart. The truest temple is here, he said. Don't forget that. For a long time they sat together in silence, watching the river flow. Then Saren stood up and began walking away, his white robes bright against the green hills. Will I see you again? Aren called. Saren turned and smiled faintly. You will. Every time you close your eyes and listen, I'll be there. In the river, in the wind, in your breath. And just like that, the old monk disappeared into the mist. The journey down. Aren began walking down the hill. Each step felt lighter than air. He heard the birds, the wind, the hum of life, all parts of the same rhythm. When he reached the village, people greeted him warmly. They remembered how he had helped during the storm. A woman offered him tea. A child handed him a flower. Aren realized something he hadn't before. Peace wasn't meant to be hidden away. It spread quietly, like fragrance from a flower, touching everything nearby. He spent one more night in the village, watching lanterns float down the river like tiny stars. He whispered to the water, "Thank you for teaching me how to flow." The next morning, he boarded the bus back to the city. Back in the city. When Aren returned, the noise was waiting for him, honking cars, flashing lights, people rushing. But now, it didn't bother him. He could feel his breath. He could hear silence inside the noise. He smiled. The city hadn't changed, but he had. At his office, co-workers noticed something different about him. He didn't rush or panic anymore. When stress came, he closed his eyes for a few seconds, breathed, and responded calmly. When a friend gossiped, Aren listened quietly and changed the topic to something kind. When deadlines piled up, he handled them one at a time. And when someone asked how he stayed so calm, he simply smiled and said, "I stopped fighting the river." A year later. Months passed. Aren continued living, working, and laughing like everyone else. But inside, he carried the mountain's peace. Every morning, before sunrise, he sat by his window, closed his eyes, and breathed deeply. He would hear the city waking, the hum of engines, the call of vendors, and beneath it, the steady rhythm of life itself.
He realized that calmness wasn't about escaping noise. It was about hearing the music hidden inside it. Sometimes when the rain fell, he imagined Saren's voice. The storm will come again. Light your lantern, and he did. Every time. Epilogue. The calm mind. Years later, Aaron grew older, his hair touched with gray. He had become a quiet teacher, not of religion or philosophy, but of living simply. He taught children how to sit still and listen to their breath. He reminded tired workers to pause for a moment each day, close their eyes, and just be. One evening after class, a young man came to him, restless, anxious, full of the same questions Aaron once had. He said, "Sir, I can't find peace. My mind won't stop running. What should I do?" Aaron smiled, just as Saren once had. He poured 2 cups of tea and handed one over. "Drink slowly," he said. "Now listen to the sound of your breath." The young man frowned. "That's it?" Aaron chuckled. "That's everything." He looked out the window at the setting sun, the city glowing with thousands of tiny lights. Somewhere, a river flowed beyond the skyline, invisible but eternal. Aaron whispered softly to himself more than anyone. Peace is not found in the mountain. It is carried in the heart, shared like a flame. He placed his hand over his chest and felt the same quiet warmth that once guided him. The lantern flame still burned inside. Outside, the world continued, noisy, beautiful, alive, and Aaron smiled gently. Because now he knew, the calm mind does not wait for the world to be quiet. It listens, breathes, understands, and shines anyway. It had been many years since Aaron had come down from the mountains. The city had changed. Taller buildings, faster lives, louder streets. But Aaron had not lost his stillness. He lived simply in a small house near a public park where a quiet pond reflected the sky. Every morning he would sit on a wooden bench, close his eyes, and breathe. The city would move around him, dogs barking, buses rumbling, people hurrying to work. Yet he remained unmoved, as if his heart were a deep lake under all that wind. People began to notice. A young woman who jogged past daily once stopped and asked, "Sir, how do you sit here so peacefully when the whole city's rushing?" Aaron smiled. "Because peace isn't the absence of movement," he said. "It's learning to move without losing your center." From that day, she began sitting beside him for a few minutes before her jog. Then an office worker joined. Then an elderly man. Soon, every morning, a small circle formed around Aaron. They called it the Circle of Stillness. He never advertised or asked anyone to join. He only listened, breathed, and guided gently, the same way Saren once had. The circle grows. One morning, a boy about 10 years old came running up to Aaron. "Teacher," the boy said breathlessly, "I get angry at my father. He always scolds me. How do I stop being angry?" Aaron looked into the boy's eyes and said, "Next time you feel the anger coming, don't fight it. Close your eyes and ask it what it wants to say. Listen before you answer." A few days later, the boy came back smiling. "It worked," he said. "The anger just went away after I listened." Aaron nodded gently. "You see? Even anger softens when it feels heard." That became another small teaching in his circle. Do not silence your emotions. Understand them. Soon, hundreds of people had heard about the quiet man in the park who helped others without asking anything in return. The return to the river one evening, long after sunset, Aaron decided to visit the mountain again. He packed lightly, only a walking stick, his lantern, and an old notebook filled with letters his students had written. As he climbed, memories flooded him. The sound of rain, the smell of pine, the shimmer of the river under moonlight. When he reached the temple clearing, he found it empty. The stones worn smooth, the wildflowers still swaying. But there was something different. Near the river stood a new stone statue, the statue of a monk holding a lantern. Aaron smiled. "Saren," he whispered, "you never really left, did you?" He sat by the riverbank and took a long, slow breath. The air was thin and pure, just as he remembered. He whispered into the wind, "Master, your teachings reached far beyond this place. Your calmness ripples still, through me, through them, through every breath that remembers to be gentle." A gust of wind passed through the trees, and for a brief moment, Aaron could almost hear Saren's voice again. "The river flows, Aaron. And now, so do you." A final lesson. Aaron stayed by the river until dawn. When the first rays of sunlight touched the water, he wrote in his notebook, a message meant for whoever would find it someday. If you wish for a calm mind, listen to your breath. If you wish for peace, listen to others. If you wish for stillness, listen to the world. Calmness is not a mountain you climb. It is a rhythm you carry. He placed the notebook beside the statue and started walking down the hill, feeling the warmth of the rising sun on his face. At that moment he realized the peace he had spent years cultivating was no longer something he practiced. It was simply who he was. Years later, many seasons passed. Children grew up and spoke of the gentle man by the pond who listened more than he talked. His circle became a community. His lessons became stories, and his name became a quiet legend whispered among those who sought peace. They said that sometimes, on calm mornings, when the mist hangs low over the park pond, a faint figure could be seen sitting at the edge, breathing with the rhythm of the water, eyes closed, face peaceful. No one knew if it was real or just a memory, but they always said the same thing. If you sit there quietly long enough, you'll feel calmer, as if someone invisible is reminding you to breathe. And in that stillness, if one listened very closely, they might hear the echo of a distant voice. The calm mind does not wait for silence. It becomes silence. When the storm rages outside, the breath is the anchor inside. Aaron wrote that the first and simplest way to calm the mind is to return to your breath. When thoughts race, when fear grows, when emotions rise, don't fight them. Just notice your breathing. He said, if your mind is a wild horse, your breath is the gentle hand that tames it. Every morning he would breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 2, and breathe out slowly for 6. He did this not to escape the world, but to return to it. Steady, clear, ready. Try this now. Sit quietly and take 1 deep breath, all the way down to your belly. Hold it, then let it go, as if you are letting go of something you don't need anymore. That's the first door to calmness. The listening heart. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of listening. Aaron learned this when he stopped speaking for days at the monastery. At first, he thought silence meant saying nothing. But he later understood. Silence meant hearing everything more deeply. When someone talks, listen, not just to their words, but to the feeling behind them. When the wind blows, listen. It carries stories of trees and clouds. When your mind speaks, listen, not to obey, but to understand. He wrote, the calm mind listens before it reacts. That is how anger loses its fuel. Practice. Before answering anyone, take 1 quiet breath, then speak. You'll be surprised how gentle your words become. The gentle focus. The mind is like water. It becomes what it touches. In the city, Aaron realized most people's anxiety came not from too little time, but from too many directions. He used to chase 10 thoughts at once, work, fear, goals, people's opinions, and ended up nowhere. Then he learned to do 1 thing at a time, with full attention, full heart. When he cooked, he only cooked. When he walked, he only walked. When he breathed, he only breathed. That is the art of gentle focus, to give yourself wholly to the moment you are in. It turns ordinary things into meditation. Practice. Choose one simple daily activity: drinking tea, bathing, walking. Do it slowly, without distraction. Notice every sound, touch, and movement. That's calmness in motion. The storm within. Calm is not the absence of storms. It is the courage to face them without drowning. Aaron learned this the night of the Great Flood. He realized that fear, pain, and anger don't go away when ignored. They grow louder. But when faced with awareness, like looking straight into lightning, they begin to soften. He wrote, "To calm the mind, do not hide from your feelings. Sit beside them like an old friend who came to tell you something." Practice. When something upsets you, don't distract yourself immediately. Pause. Ask yourself gently, what am I really feeling right now? Sometimes naming the emotion is enough to quiet it. The ripple of peace. A calm mind is not the goal, it is the beginning. This was Aaron's final realization. After finding peace, he saw that the purpose of calmness wasn't to live alone in silence, but to carry that peace into the world, to speak kindly when others shout, to forgive when others blame, to be steady when others panic. Because calmness spreads like ripples in a pond. He wrote in his final note, "If you keep your mind calm, even one moment of your peace can heal 100 hearts around you." Practice. Each day, share your calm. Not through words, but through presence. Smile at a stranger. Listen to someone's pain. Stay kind when it's hardest. That's how peace multiplies. Aaron's last words. On the final page of his notebook, these words were written in faded ink. The calm mind is not a place you find once. It is a path you walk forever. One breath, one thought, one act of kindness at a time. And when you forget it, simply begin again, down below. The city woke again. Horns, footsteps, hurried voices. Yet somewhere among the noise, something invisible lingered. A kind of peace that moved quietly from person to person. A woman at a tea stall smiled at a stranger for no reason. A child stopped crying when his father picked him up instead of scolding him. A man paused before shouting, took one deep breath, and said calmly, "Let's talk." None of them knew why they'd done it. None of them had heard of the man named Aaron or the old monk Saren. But the ripple continued, silent, unseen, endless. Far away, near the mountain's edge, the river shimmered in the dawn. A lantern floated gently on the surface, its flame steady despite the current. The water carried it slowly downstream, past forests, past fields, past villages that had never heard the monks' names. And somewhere beyond the horizon, where the river met the sea, the lantern's light finally melted into the first rays of sunrise, not vanishing, but becoming part of everything. If someone had stood by that riverbank at that moment, they might have heard a whisper riding on the wind, soft as breath, clear as truth. Be still. You are the river, and you are the sky. The calm you seek was never gone. It was always inside you. The wind sighed once more, gentle as a closing page. The world continued, alive, imperfect, noisy, but within that endless motion, a thread of stillness remained. And in that stillness, Aaron lived on, not as a man, not as a teacher, but as a reminder that peace is not a place you reach. It is the way you walk. Audiobook script. I can turn the whole story into a version written for voice. Slow, meditative pacing, natural pauses, and breathing cues. Something you could record or listen to for about an hour. Personal reflection guide. I can adapt Aaron's 5 lessons into a journal format, with spaces to write your own thoughts each day. The city never slept. Cars honked, phones buzzed, people rushed as if time itself were running away. And in the middle of that noise was Maya, a 26-year-old graphic designer with tired eyes and a heart full of dreams she no longer recognized. Every day felt the same. Screens, deadlines, endless chatter. Her thoughts never stopped. She couldn't remember the last time she'd truly breathed. One morning on her way to work, Maya passed by the park near her apartment. Something unusual caught her eye. A small group of people sitting quietly around the pond. No phones, no talking, just breathing. In the center of the circle sat an old woman with silver hair and a serene smile. There was something familiar about her, a softness that felt like sunlight after rain. Maya hesitated, then sat down on the grass at the edge of the group. The woman opened her eyes and said gently, "Welcome. You can stay as long as you like. We just breathe here." Chapter 2. The Quiet Space. At first, Maya couldn't do it. Her mind screamed, "You're wasting time. You have work. You should be checking your messages." Her body twitched with restlessness, but the others were still. Eyes closed, bodies calm, faces peaceful. She stayed. Minutes passed like slow rain. Then something small happened. A single deep breath slipped out of her chest, unforced, natural. For the first time in months, her shoulders relaxed. When the session ended, the old woman smiled. "You heard the breath," she said softly. "That's how it begins." Maya returned the next day, and the next. Every morning, she sat a little longer. The noise in her head still came, but now it passed like clouds instead of storms. Chapter 3. The Lantern Returns. One morning, after a week of rain, Maya found a small wooden box placed near the pond. Inside was a folded paper and a lantern made of old brass. The note read, "For whoever remembers to breathe." This flame was once carried by Aaron. She looked up, startled. Aaron? She had heard that name whispered in the group before, like a legend. Some said he was a monk. Others said he was just a kind man who taught peace. Maya held the lantern in her hands. It was cold, yet somehow alive, as if the metal itself remembered warmth. That night, she lit it. And as the small flame danced in her apartment, she realized she wasn't just lighting a candle. She was lighting a promise. To live with calm, even in chaos. Chapter 4. The ripple grows weeks turned into months. Maya began teaching her colleagues simple breathing breaks during lunch. At first, they laughed, but slowly they began joining her. Soon, every afternoon, a group gathered in the office lounge to close their eyes for 5 quiet minutes. One day, a manager approached her and said, "I don't know what you're doing, Maya, but the office feels lighter." She smiled. "I'm just teaching people how to remember themselves." And that was true. She wasn't spreading meditation, she was spreading remembrance. Aaron's calm was now flowing through her. Through every person she taught, through every quiet act of kindness. The ripple continued. Chapter 5. The Message in the Wind. Years later, when Maya grew older, she returned to the mountain where the story had begun. She followed the same path Aaron had once walked. The pine-scented air, the rustle of leaves, the glimmer of the river. By the riverbank, she saw the old stone statue, the monk with the lantern. She placed her lantern beside it, whispered, "Your light reached me." And for a brief shimmering moment, the wind rose, soft but strong, and she heard a voice like breath against the sky. "And now it will reach others, through you." Maya smiled. The flame of her lantern flickered once, then steadied, glowing against the twilight. She closed her eyes, breathed deeply, and whispered, "The calm mind does not end." It continues end of the circle of stillness, Maya's story.